On July 3rd, 2021, the Atlanta Hawks lost to the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals after taking them to 6 games, which is something that nobody expected them to do. Sure, Atlanta had been one of the teams that was right on the cusp of not contending but being a legit threat in the Eastern Conference, but for them to make a run all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals this year was insane. They had to beat the Philadelphia 76ers, where we got the infamous Ben Simmons moment of him not going up for the layup and passing it away. And then the dude got fouled, and that was what it was. So the Atlanta ended up beating the 76ers, and now they play the Bucks, and they pushed the Bucks to 6 games, which is something nobody had thought they could do. At this point, the Bucks had Giannis, who was arguably the best player in the league, one of the best constructed rosters around them, with Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Pat Connaughton was playing at a high level. It was so many guys on this Bucks squad. So for Atlanta to come in, and in game one, they already beat Milwaukee, and then for them to push it to 6 games was pretty impressive. But after this series, Atlanta would just be very disappointed. Atlanta would follow us up with a bunch of seasons of just mediocrity. I mean, the front office couldn't build around Trey. You had some coach movement trying to figure out which coach can best utilize Trey and his skill set and get the assets around him. The front office wasn't able to put players around him, and the Hawks were just a constant play-in team contender. But last year, there was some potential upside for the Hawks. They had Jalen Johnson, who was playing really well, looked like he was breaking out. You got traded for Dyson Daniels after the DeJounte Murray experiment didn't work, and Dyson Daniels had one of the best seasons we have seen from a guard on the defensive side of the ball ever. So you finally get the defense around Trey, but Clint Capella is aging. You have other players who might be too young, like Kobe Buffkin, who can't really contribute at a high level now. You have Zach Ricochet, who you got with the first overall pick, but he's a rookie. And with Jalen Johnson going out, you guys for sure weren't going to be competing for nothing serious in the Eastern Conference. So this offseason was very key for the Hawks, especially with the East being wide open this year, with the Cavs, we not knowing how good they're going to be, and the Celtics being Jason Tatumless. The East is wide open, and it looks like so far Atlanta is trying to take it. So free agency has begun, and the Hawks have had one of the best free agency periods out of every single team in the NBA, including the draft. I mean, we know the Magic go out, they get Desmond Bane to go ahead and get another ball handler, a legit threat on offense next to Paolo and France. But the Hawks sit up here and they say, okay, that's cool. They end up going and getting Nickeil Alexander-Walker on the first day of free agency, which is huge for this Atlanta Hawks team because Nickeil can provide so much for the Hawks. He's great defensively, which we know if it's Trae Young, you need defense around him, and he can provide some solid value on offense and maybe be a ball handler when it comes to shooting. Just in a various amount of ways, he can contribute to winning basketball on your team, which is something the Hawks needed. And then in the draft, I love their move for getting Asa Newell. I mean, with Clint Capella obviously being aging and him going out, you have Onyeka Okongwu who can fill him in, but you need another big. And with Trey, we all know the type of big you need. A rim-running, defensive presence type of big, and that's exactly who Asa is. So with getting Asa, that's huge. Getting Nickeil, that is huge as well. But their big deal was getting Kristaps Porzingis from the Celtics. Now, I'm not the biggest Kristaps guy just because throughout his entire career, except for probably like his first few seasons in New York, he's been very inconsistent in terms of his availability. We saw with the Celtics, he was going through some type of sickness, and that just kept him out for majority of the season, and he's really been like that even last year when the Celtics were on their final run. He wasn't really able to contribute all the time to the Celtics because he would be in and out of the lineup. But when he was out there, he was nice. Now going to the Hawks, they're saying he's finally recovered from the sickness, so Kristaps could be nice, and if Kristaps is able to give the Hawks like 65 to 70 games, I think that's a good season for Kristaps, and I think the Hawks can be legit in the East, and they might even be the #1 seed in the East, although there are other teams making moves. But the East is wide open. The Hawks have Trae Young, who you can make an argument to be one of the top players in the entire Eastern Conference. So you have Trae, you have a great team around him, you've made some great deals. I don't see how the Hawks can actually fail this upcoming season, barring some crazy injury, which God forbid a crazy injury happen to this team, but they have been cooking, and they have a really nice roster around Trey. And then on top of that, they made a trade with the Pelicans for their then 13th pick. Pelicans wanted to move up. They wanted to select Derek Queen, and they traded their 22nd pick to the Hawks. But the Pelicans sat up here and traded not only their 22nd pick, but also their unprotected pick for next year, just because they're that much of a believer in Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen. And I made a video about how I feel about this trade, but let's just say I think Atlanta fleeced, and the Pelicans aren't going to be good next year. I can guarantee you that right there. You're going to have a young team, a very dysfunctional team. You're not going to be good. And to give the Hawks, a team who was already contending, a potential top 10, top 5 pick, unprotected, is insane. Especially after the Hawks had already traded away their pick for this year's draft. So not only did you give them a pick in this year's draft, you also gave your pick for next year as well. And if I'm the Hawks, because this is a Hawks video, I would be ecstatic about this trade because it's no telling how that pick can be, but it's going to be a pretty good pick next year in what is looking to be a pretty good draft class. And overall, this new Hawks front office has just been making great moves. When it comes to building a roster, I mean, you don't really get too much better than this with Trey unless you get like another star next to him, which I believe maybe Jalen Johnson could develop into. But point blank period is Trey had defense around him. Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Nneka Okongwu, Asa Newell, Kristaps if he's healthy, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like, these are very high-level defenders who can hold their own. So now where Trey isn't going to be getting picked on defense so many times because you can kind of shield him. And we all know the type of person and player that Trey is on offense. So giving him all these different weapons for him to just be able to do whatever he wants, I mean, sheesh. I mean, Trey's going to have a field day next year. I'm certain of it. And the Hawks have been, in my opinion, the biggest winner so far from this entire free agency period. So, yeah, I mean, these are just my opinions. I think the Hawks have put on a masterclass of how to build around your star and to improve. You know, they have been mediocre for so very long in the NBA, playing contenders, nothing more, nothing less, just being really stagnant. And with the moves that this new front office has made, it seems like the Hawks are finally getting up out of that mediocrity stage. And with the East wide open, we should start talking about the Hawks as a team that could make it to the finals because they have all the tools to do so. They have an offensive engine in Trae Young who, hey, we know how great he is. He's one of the better guards in the entire league. You have Trae Young, and you have one of the, if not the best perimeter defender, Dyson Daniels, and a bunch of other pieces around him as well. You have a good coach in Quinn Snyder who knows how to kind of build around his team and make them run to be efficient and a good team because Quinn Snyder is a good coach. We saw what he did when he was in Utah. So, hey, it's looking up for Atlanta right now. If I'm a Hawks fan, I'll be very optimistic for their upcoming season. But, end of the day, these are just my opinions. This is how I feel about free agency so far and who is the biggest winner. Let me know how you feel in the comments, whether you're a Hawks fan or a fan of another team. How do you feel like your team is doing? But that's all I got. And until next time, peace.